you. Croeso nôl, welcome back, everyone. And we have a very substantial afternoon session as well. And as you'll see, we put some things on the consent agenda at the end of the meeting because we have so much at the meeting. It's not something we would normally do. But in terms of the AAA reports, we are going to take the alert section of the AAA reports as part of the integrated performance review report, just to make sure that we don't lose sight of this. So we reconvene, Abby, with a paper on the mental health transformation programme.
Thank you very much indeed. And it's quite a poignant day on which we're taking this paper, because colleagues might have seen Mel Walker in the building, who's been our specialist strategic advisor in relation to mental health. Mel finishes with us today, so I want to put on record my enormous thanks to Mel for the support she's given us, and the support she's given us as a board in terms of helping us understand the scale of challenge we've got in relation to delivery of a modern fit-for-purpose mental health service, as well as working very closely with the service group in terms of supporting them with the improvement work to date. And she's managed to straddle both that support into the service group at their senior leadership team, and actually the tiers below in terms of the work she's been doing with some of the other colleagues within our mental health and service group. So the purpose of the report is to bring an update on all aspects of our transformation programme. So this should be pretty familiar to you in terms of the 5 work streams that we have got under development. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I'm just going to pick up out a couple of important components. Colleagues will be aware that this is formally designated as a service concern. That's originally because we went to NHSP and I all the predecessor bodies to say, could we have some support? And that responded, or the response involved us being escalated into a service of concern. I'm really grateful to the work stream leads and Tina's agreed to pick up and lead the workforce work stream, which I'm really grateful for. And you've been appraised around where we are with the stabilisation plan and the works to date to improve the physical environment. So if I pick off just the headlines in each of the work streams, clearly one of the key questions in the service of concern conversation is how do we know our services are safe and of good quality? Mel showed me yesterday, Raj, the work that the quality and safety lead in mental health, working with other colleagues and with one of Andrew's team, Rebecca Archer, to produce a quality and safety dashboard. I'm pretty sure it will be a first in Wales, and it looks absolutely fantastic. It will be something that we can report into here across all of the domains about what looks like a quality service. So it's in its infancy, but I think we will be able to respond. We did share a screen grab of that in our last service of concern meeting, but it will be a live dashboard that we can use to track. Some of it's manual feed because we know from the previous conversation that our data capture is on a journey of an improvement and maturity, let's say. But so some of it will be a bit clunky, but we will share that with Welsh Government as part of the in escalation board meeting that we've got next week. So really grateful for colleagues around that. In terms of the estates, so we are working on 3 time horizons. The team are working very hard on the immediate works, improving the environment, recognising that's very difficult to achieve when you've got full occupancy. So we've currently got 2 beds down in Kevin Coyd adult wards so that they can get and do the refurbishment work. And the feedback we've had from both staff and the patients has been really positive, and that has been well received. And it was good to have held our board development session up there recently. Workforce, we've signed off, and I know it went through P&F yesterday in terms of the final governance stage. Enhancement of workforce in 2 areas. One, in terms of crisis home treatment team, to make sure we right-size that team, because that's critical in terms of preventing unnecessary admission and enabling us to sort people in escalating crisis in the community. And we've also signed off on the enhanced nursing in the adult acute wards. Our expectation is that in the grand total of where we spend in relation to mental health, it should wash its face in terms of investor say. Obviously, there's a sequence of how we step through that. That's also in the integrated performance report. Our number of out of area placements are coming down. We're tracking the complex cases and making sure that we continue on that downward trip, because we are still an outlier when we compare with other health boards in terms of their use of external, independent and out of area placement for planning as part of acute adult care. You know about the informatics work, which is fantastic, rolling that forward. The risk associated with that is where the Welsh Government continue to give the funding. Again, I think we are, this is a really positive step in terms of the connected care agenda, and we're clear on what we want to do as part of the next step of the system we're currently using. Richard and team are working very closely with the service group around how we make sure that our programme of continuous engagement and co-production is embedded, and also the formal engagement that we need to undertake as part of the process is embedded. And one of the notes we've had from Teresa and Bakulu in her associate board member role is about mental health transformation programme and making sure that we have a particular focus and lens on access for global majority population in particular. And interesting, our local High Sheriff, who happens to be a very experienced person from the world of mental health service provision, is also interested in that particular focus. And Liz and I have got a conversation with one of the local authority colleagues in Newport Talbot. I know Alan couldn't rejoin us this afternoon, who's really progressing that work. So that will tie in very nicely. And perhaps we could invite Teresa to that conversation with Liz. In terms of the communication work, it will need to run alongside the service redesign work. I should have put that at the top really, because actually that shapes everything in terms of our transformation programme. And just to reassure board members that we are absolutely aligned with the open access and step 2.0 model that is underpinning the national service model. And that is about making sure that we are supporting people's needs whenever they present in a really timely way, and really collapsing the sense that you do an assessment and then you wait, because actually the evidence is that when someone's presenting, you may be doing an assessment, but you're actually also providing a there and then therapeutic intervention. Digital will have a massive role to play in terms of the platform. We know we've got Silver Cloud, we know we've got One on Press 2 really well embedded, but those will be important parts of the programme. There is an expectation at the national level that this model will result in a bed reduction in terms of acute beds, and that will need to be worked through as part of the national work. So the second time horizon is our stabilisation plan to shore up the risks we've got associated with the current environment, and we'll be bringing through more formally the business case to support the capital and the engagement that we'll be undertaking over the next couple of months to support that position that will enable us to make use of capacity that's not being used to best effect, and will enable us to consolidate services on fewer sites to address some of the challenges. Just the reference to the national, I think in the reading room we've included a draft programme initiation document for the national work that's being developed. So there is an expectation that a business case will be developed that will address both the sense of, is there any pump priming needed and revenue to support transition to the new model of care? And that will be worked through. And then the business case for developing the third time horizon for us, which is the longer term and permanent solution to our acute provision. And that work is now being led nationally. So it is looking at all adult mental health beds, including mother and baby, and including older people as young people services where they are co-located with adults. We will bring more back on that when there's more information. And we had hoped that we would receive the final PIDs. Maria is sitting on one of the national groups, and Mel has been feeding into the national group on behalf of Deb in recent times. that will be important. I think we will need to bring that back to board in September and
Yeah.
November
I don't
as
think
part
we've
of
had
this
final
transformation
version.
update. Yeah. And then two final things. I'm really grateful to the support from the board that we've had around establishing a board level mental health post to replace the support we've had in from Mel to continue on the transformation journey. That's important in the context of the board level exec roles that we are filling over the next little while. And I've talked to Mel about the sorts of characteristics we need in terms of that role. And indeed, Mel will provide some external assessor support through that process. Marie and I have talked about how we transition into this being one of our, but it's already a very well embedded program. We've got really good program manager. We've got some really good colleagues working in digital on this, and the data team that are now supporting all the individual who's working on this are really excellent and really developing in their career. So it's great to see that. Marie is going to support in terms of the transformation program and Marie's team in terms of the driver. And we've got more of the DU support. John's team have freed up some capacity with one of our very experienced program managers who will give them more senior support. We are going to move from phase 1 to phase 2, and we will write refreshed PID for phase 2 of the program. Actually learning some of the lessons from the perinatal, Jan, around the importance of connecting the milestones and the metrics about how we're going to judge the progress we want to make. But I do think there's more work to do on resourcing money in terms of the income we get from our allocation, the income we get for services in our commission, and understanding that. And there have been some returns into the delivery unit and we on what it's costing to deliver. We just need to make sure those pieces of work join up. And I will pick up an initial conversation that I've had around, we might want some support about how we do that. And my sense is that would be good to do consistently across all of the health boards, so we make sure we're comparing apples with apples and know what our current model's costing, what the future model will cost, and to make sure that we're using national opportunities like GIRFT as it applies to mental health to look at our productivity and efficiency and how we're using our existing resources. So that's probably a lot in there, but I'm happy to take any questions. And as I said, I'm just very grateful for the support we've had from Mel and Narissa while she was with us for a brief period.
Thank you, Abby. I've got Marie then Steve. Marie?
Yeah, just very quickly as a slight add-on. So we've now finally got we've got the RPB very keen to engage on the service redesign components that sit within the community. So in a way that we've got the older persons board mirroring the UEC or picking up the UEC components on a partnership basis under the RPB and the transforming complex care, the CHC. The third big programme in the RPB is mental health transformation. So it will mirror and input into. So there will be a complete interface with the health board transformation programme for the community-based redesign, which I'll co-chair with Andy Jarrett.
Got Steve, Matt, and Pat. Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. And Marie's dealt with one of the questions I was going to ask. So the one that remains is we're doing a major mental health transformation apparently at no cost, which is marvelous if we can achieve it. Just a bit concerned. You alluded to timelines, the sequencing, and I don't think out of area placements are going to seriously come down until we have the service model redesign in place and the community mental health offering upgraded. So there'll be a time lag there. But the out of area placements and indeed the variable pay, they were making us run mental health at a deficit. So what you're saying is we're going to use that deficit to finance investment in upgraded nursing arrangements. So we'll still be at a deficit. So actually, it isn't no cost. What we're doing is we're going to continue with the deficit for the foreseeable future because we're funding investment from previous deficit.
If I just respond to that very specifically, so we have made a commitment to reduce our out of area beds, and you will appreciate that there should be financial benefit as we continue to improve that. So what we've committed to as one of our breakthrough objectives is around reducing that significantly and reducing the length of stays of patients in those beds and making sure we're not using them inappropriately. There will be a small number of areas where that's appropriate to do so, but we do need, there are some health boards who use no area out of area placements. We do need to look at what they are doing that we can learn from as part of that. And in terms of the workforce modelling, that's why I'm really grateful that Tina's picking up the workforce piece, because it needs to connect to reducing variable pay, reducing agency spend, which we know we still rely on very heavily in that service because we've got to keep the service safe. But as they appoint their posts, we know we're going to take some streamliners. We know we've got work to do to make sure we've got the right skill mix in terms of newly qualified and experienced staff. And so we'll oversee that, Steve, in terms of how that works through. Claire is keeping a very close eye, because from my point of view, we broadly said this needs to be a cost neutral based on the budget that's been set for mental health. But I do think this overlay of a piece of work to understand when we get our allocation, if we're spending more than our ring fence allocation for our local population, and then we're getting commissioning income, we need to understand the drivers of our cost at a more deep level than we've currently got. And that will be an important piece of work where we might want some expertise. And using GERF as a framework, I was talking to them about that yesterday, would be a really useful thing to do. My concern is about capacity for the service, as with many of these things, with a very busy operational job, whilst we're unfreezing current service model and transforming into future state, and then enabling that to happen in a really timely way. That would be part of the conversation at the National Board around, is there pump priming that we need for this to be delivered? My understanding that that was the conversation that was happening, which would really help with that in the way that you've described.
So a quick follow-up. I mean, the out of area placements has varied in, as I understand it, in the last couple of months between 9 and 18. So it just goes up and down unpredictably. But is it the case then that we're not going to be able to invest in appropriate levels of nurse staffing until out of area placements?
No.
It's not. So there's not a.
We need to make sure that the first phase of the nursing that we've agreed is about making sure that the wards are safe, and that we will look to, as first call on that, the reinvestment from bringing down bank and agency costs as part of that. We would also expect to see benefits. So the team that are doing the acute segment on model ward and model staffing, that will play in as well, because we'll also get the benefit, we hope, of things like reduced length of stay, improved therapeutic intervention, support for patients whilst they're on the ward, and we should see things like sickness and better rostering of the staff across acuity. It'll be slightly different for mental health, but we can use the principles and work that through as we implement this. So the conversation is what are the broader quality indicators, as we've done with Gowers and now the roll-up wards, that we would use to judge and make an assessment about the benefits. And I think I wasn't in a finance and performance committee, but I think that was a good conversation.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're trying to do. We've got a baseline comparator where we've got absence and overtime, etc. And then we're going to map the improvement as we enhance the nursing mix, which will take that cost out and replace it with the fixed cost of the nursing. The other point to note is that we have had an investment in capital. So although we might have had we're a revenue challenge, we're also investing in infrastructure, as you're aware. So that there has been support, and we're supporting that through our discretionary to improve the underlying infrastructure as well.
Okay, thanks.
Matt, you want to
Just quickly on the implementation of RIO. So it's progressing really well. We've now rolled it out to the local wards as well. But just picking up on the next stage, which will require that investment that we are hopeful of getting from Welsh Government, that will need a procurement to proceed. So at this stage, we can't state that it's RIO. So we just need to be careful about the handling of that in the picture.
Thank you, Matt. Pat?
It's been largely covered. It was around the monitoring of the benefits of the investor save case, including those that makes it wash its face, so the variable pay and the band fives and the thing. And that was just really.
And of course, PFC will be overseeing that as well as executive. Do we have any other comments or questions on this? So thank you very much for the update. Abby, we will write formally to Mel Walker to thank her for all the support, advice, guidance that she's given since what, February 25, something like that. She's been with us. So we'll put that on record. So we've considered where we are on the transformation programme. And there are a number of, obviously, governance, quality and safety reporting arrangements, but we have those covered through our various policies and procedures. We are in discussions clearly with Welsh Government and NHS PNI around what's happening on our estate and with the national programme. So we can take assurance, I think, that we've got the ongoing management, quality, safety and estate risks mapped, and that we are content and supportive of moving to phase 2 of the transformation programme. Does that reflect our discussion? Thank you very much. So then we move now to the next section, which mentioned earlier is about oversight and scrutiny of in-year delivery against our plans. We bring this all together so that we can see safety, quality, performance and finance across the piece. And as I've said, we are filing, bringing in the alerts from the committee chair's reports into the different sections of paper. So, Marie, I hand over to you to choreograph.
Excellent, thank you. This is a new approach, as Chair has outlined, to how we are presenting on the integrated performance report. There is a lot of information in there. Just probably a point of governance to emphasise is that the full report goes through Performance and Finance Committee, but also the quality and safety, digital, etc., other areas of performance assurance and scrutiny go through the relevant subcommittees of the board as well for further assurance. And it's those alerts that are coming from all of those committees that we will reference as we go through the report. Unlike last time, we will not be doing a canter through the slide deck, but what I will do is hand over to exec leads who will report on their areas. And we've framed it so that we'll go through the running order in line with our breakthrough objective. So we'll start with looking through the population health breakthrough objectives and critical performance areas by exception, and then any alerts can be population health committee. We'll move to Raj for quality and safety, HCA-Eyes, healthcare applied infections, and any relevant alerts from QNS committee. And Liz will pick up perinatal and any other relevant alerts from quality and safety committee. And then we'll move on to Craig for operational performance for planned care, diagnostics, cancer and mental health, and any alerts from PNF and quality and safety. And then I think John and Craig will do a double act on UEC, where we're talking about handover 45 and cargo care delay and any relevant alerts from performance and finance, quality and safety. And then finally to Tina, well, actually it's Emma today, isn't it, Emma? Workforce priority, performance priorities and relevant committee alerts on that basis. And there's a couple that will speak up at the end, Chair, around risk. But if I hand over firstly to Hugo for population health.
Thank you. So just a brief update here. We have a work programme, a detailed work programme in public health, and we're very happy to share that with anyone who wants to see it. In terms of the 2 breakthrough objectives, there's ongoing work in those areas, which I think are making progress. The Population Health Committee raised 4 alerts through the Integrated Performance Report. Firstly, the strategic importance of the Tata Health Impact Assessment for medium-term planning. And then secondly, as the board are very aware, the ongoing resource constraints within which we're operating. Thirdly, the sustainability risks associated with short-term grant funds. You know, quite a lot of the money we get from Welsh Government is annualised. So that causes challenges with employing staff to undertake work over longer term. And then finally, just there was a presentation on palliative and end-of-life care, which raised the issue of equity of data, for example, around ethnicity that was noted in that context. So I think all these things confirm and reinforce the importance of prevention and health inequalities and sustainable delivery as we continue to pursue our breakthrough objectives. Thank you.
Steve, was there anything you wanted to add?
I would just to say that we've done a great deal of work. We've commissioned a great deal of work and done some of it on the Tata Steel health impact assessment. Only to say there's a lot of data and a lot of information has come out of that, and it is incumbent upon us, and I know Marie has got it under control. It's incumbent upon us to build that into our planning. It is having and will have a huge impact not only on Newport at all, but Swansea and also the wider area. So the results of that impact assessment must be built into our planning. I know it is going to be.
Any other points for Hugo?
No, in that case, we can move on to Raj, and quality and safety, specifically around healthcare acquired infections.
Thank you, Mary. The fact is, from a healthcare acquired infection, we continue to face a significant challenge with regards to the C. diff perspective. I would say that the fact that there are some key contributing factors, including the pressures on patient flow, bed occupancy, and affecting the cleaning and the decontamination process, and also achieving effective decant base for the C. diff side of things. But on a positive assurance perspective, the antimicrobial stewardship continues to perform very strongly. The primary care antibiotic prescribing continues to fall faster than the Welsh average. It also has got the lowest antibiotic prescribing rate in Wales. And secondary care has got the second lowest broad spectrum antibiotic prescribing. So from my end, from an exec perspective, we have got a gold CDI setup. There's actually been silver setup in each service group. And there's going to be scrutiny meetings with regards to the individual service group, not for C. diff, but also for E. coli and also for Klebsiella, which is already commenced. And the priority action from the healthcare acquired infection will be to strengthen the antimicrobial stewardship in both primary and secondary care, to improve the IV to oral antibiotic switch compliance. And this is where we could actually do far better. And to promote the consistent adherence to IPC precautions and mandatory training, and improve the environmental cleaning and protected time for decontamination. So it is a work in progress. It is a matter of concern, but it has actually been making sure that it's actually an exec oversight. The fact that it's actually been scaled up to make sure that the service groups have got targets to deliver and it will be followed through. Thank you.
Thanks, Raj. And if we hand over now Liz, who specifically picked up, I think, on perinatal patient experience.
I think Raj is going to pick up on the radiology issue.
Yeah, I think with regards to the radiology, which has actually been the viable 20-week scan, which is where there was actually quite a difficulty with regards to the anomaly and trying to crystallize with regards to the viability perspective. It's not an health board, it's actually a Wales-wide issue. And this is something that we have actually escalated across to PNI and the Welsh Government, and we are working more.
So I'm going to pick up on the breakthrough objective relating to patient harm, really. And the one breakthrough objective that we've got directly related to reducing patient harm is around pressure ulcers. We know it's our highest incidence across the health board, and we've committed to reducing by 30% this year. What we have discovered is setting the baseline for that has been difficult, and that's because some data issues. We've been working with DHCW. I don't know why I'm pointing to you. We've been working with DHCW. So we've committed to reducing avoidable pressure ulcers by 30%. What we found when we went into the data was that the avoidability hadn't been recorded, and it's not a mandated field on the incident recording. We've been working to see if we can get it mandated. That's not happening at the moment. So we're going back over the data for last year to look at what was deemed avoidable, what was deemed unavoidable. Each incident goes through a scrutiny process and a panel to determine avoidability or not. So we need to go through this process, and the service groups have all got work in place to do that so that we can set the baseline. We do know that we had an increase in pressure ulcer prevalence through our busiest period and our busiest time. And we know that's directly related to the situation we find ourselves in our acute hospitals, which are full, and where we have some delays of care, as we talked about earlier. But what we are doing is we've set up a strategic group for scrutiny. We're using the All Wales pathways now across the board, and we've got a good audit process in place, which follows up after an education process with all of our teams and our staff. What we haven't had in the health board previously is a centralised tissue viability team. And that to me is key to driving the standardisation and success across the organisation. So we're currently working with the tissue viability teams, which have been devolved into services, to bring that back centrally and have very strong and skilled workforce to drive the improvements that we want to make. We have been working on digital identification of pressure ulcer damage. We validate every pressure ulcer that is reported. We're now able to do that with the help of Digital Cymru from a photographic perspective, so that makes it easier and quicker to validate. So a huge amount of work ongoing, and we are committed to that 30% reduction. We just need to get to the baseline to know where we are against that. From an alert perspective, one of the alerts that came out in Q&S was the backlog of patient complaints. That backlog sits with the former PTR process, the putting things right process. Each of the service groups has a clear plan to eradicate that backlog, and we split the teams, one to work on the PTR older complaints, and they have been reducing. There's more work to do, but we have commitment, and we heard yesterday in the performance review from Morrison their commitment to reduce that significantly in the coming months. And we also have implemented listening to patients, which is the new guidance and policy from Welsh Government, and that is going really, really well. The whole LTP process is to ensure that we look for and offer early resolution to any issues or concerns that are raised. And I can say that from the implementation at the 1st of April, we are making that first contact. We're having the conversations, and around 38% of our complaints do not progress to formal following this process. It's the right thing to do. If you have an issue, you want somebody to talk to you about it, and you want that to happen quickly. So there's a 10-day target in that. And so fewer are then going on to formal complaints, which will help us with our processes going forward. So a huge amount of work around that. And then there was one other alert that came up, Jean, at Q&S that I'm going to ask Claire to elaborate on, and that is the health and safety workforce alert that came out of Q&S.
Yeah, so this relates to the health and safety team in and around providing assurance around actions outstanding in relation to fire safety. We've already agreed the phase 1 resourcing plan to enable that team to hit the priorities in the area that team is being recruited to. They've already done another assessment around the outstanding audits, and we have a plan to tackle those predominantly in Singleton and Morriston. And actually they've revised the risk now from a 20 to a 60 now that detailed plan has been underway. They've done a new dashboard that will be brought to Q&S for in future, and then you'll see from that where the areas of strength and weaknesses are, and in putting that the plan to tackle the high priority areas in that. And they now obviously are recruiting the resources to deliver that plan.
And now we'll move on in Deb's absence to Craig to cover the other breakthrough objectives that we've got in terms of timely access to care for planned care diagnostics, cancer, mental health, and unscheduled care.
So obviously we've had detailed discussion earlier around some of these things, so I won't leave them. So planned care, obviously we maintain the positions around outpatients and 104-week rates, but without the investment, that position will deteriorate. In line with the submitted trajectory that we're put into Welsh Government. So obviously that continued performance, whilst we'll push on productivity and efficiency, will require additional resource. From a cancer perspective, and noting the alert around cancer, we did see a slight improvement in June in terms of 4 months up to 54% from a low of, it was 46 or 48. I suppose what was encouraging is that we've seen the backlog, an arrest in the growing backlog. So we've seen a slight downward trend there. But you will be probably very well aware of the issues that we have around cellular pathology and the backlog related to cellular pathology. And until that backlog is addressed, we won't see the performance get into the levels that we would want to or we'd aspire to. So I think we've said clearly that Q3 is where we think we'll be in terms of really turning the corner on this once that backlog has been cleared. In terms of diagnostics, we have seen some improvement this month, particularly in relation to radiology, and that's been due to the return of some sonographers. So our ultrasound figures have reduced significantly, and again a push on productivity around radiology. Noting from the alerts that there were some concerns around diagnostics and also around stroke. And I know there was a detailed discussion in BFC this week around stroke, showing our comparative position as an organisation across the UK in terms of our performance. From a mental health perspective, encouraging to see continuing trend in terms of out of area placements reducing, and those now down to 11. And whilst we did see a dip in CAMHS performance in June, we're anticipating that will recover in July. That was due to some short-term sickness around the admin and clerical team, and some errors in terms of the way in which patients were booked. So that's now been addressed.
Okay. I think Jean wants to come in.
May I just mention in terms of the alerts that we also identified the risk associated with the two-site working in Matt neonatal, and that's been escalated to both the corporate risk register and does remain a strategic priority for the future configuration of perinatal services and for board oversight. And the second one that I would like to remind us of is the urgent update that we've requested from Mental Health and Learning Disability Service Group, detailing the actions to address the outstanding Caswell Clinic recommendations and the reasons for the delay in closing those down.
Who can you pick up on the two site? We'll come on to that, you know, we can get to the perinatal section, including plan, etc. Craig, can you pick up? Anybody pick up on Caswell Clinic or not?
I'm happy to. There is a slide in the pack, and now I won't be able to find it. And it is not explicit in the title of the slide that it makes reference to this Caswell Clinic. So let me see if I can find out. Scroll beyond it. It talks about being in level 3 escalation, which is the JCC escalation, and it sets out the actions to deliver the improvements required as agreed with JCC. Just to give you assurance, JCC are meeting regularly with Marie is now the lead contact in Deb's absence in relation to this. And when we were, this is scrutinised at the JCC meeting, and there was recognition of the progress being made. It is slide in our board book back, 378 on my board book.
Have I misread it then? Because I don't see the reasons for the delays in closing the actions there.
So it gives you an update on the actions. So they're just working through the actions. Some of them are to do with estate
Yeah.
and needing to procure kit and get the estates work.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's slightly complicated because we don't own that estate. It's another health board's estate. So we're just working that through. And my understanding from the conversation at JCC last week is that they are confident that we're almost there in closing down the
Yeah.
outstanding actions. So
Yeah.
and I think that's your understanding as well.
It is, yeah.
So we will work through any that remain outstanding and understand if they are things that will take a bit of time because of procurement or estates work that we're working through, and the things that are directly in our control that we can do quickly. So I'm confident that we will be in that position. And just whilst we're mentioning it, this is one of the areas that JCC is doing a rapid review, medium secure and low secure, and that is due to report in this financial year, which will be one of the things we want to pick up when the JCC come to visit and attend board meeting next time in September.
And it's also on the agenda for our executive recruitment. But it is got a lot of scrutiny.
Nina?
It is.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to pick up the ED 12-hour waits breakthrough, and I'll refer to the alert that we got through on that. So the 12-hour waits, as you know, the aim is to reduce by 10% from 1,350 that we had at the beginning of the year, and we're actually going in the opposite direction at the moment. We were doing okay up until June, but it's now starting to move in the other direction. And whilst demand is playing a part, and recent demand with that hot weather, as we talked about earlier, has been significant, it's not what I think is the main driving factor behind this. We are doing a lot of work which is showing improvements in areas like flow, the number of discharges. We've actually got a reasonably good story to talk about the handover 45. ED occupancy, as you can see in the pack, is actually a bit less. We've talked about the number of COP patients, and Craig's new news that it's down to 152 on the delayed patient side. That's not translating into ED processing improvement, and you can see that in the 12-hour performance, but you can also see it in other performance areas. And the reason for that is, while the actions are delivering, they're not delivering at the scale we need. So we are doing better at discharging people earlier in the day, but we're only doing that on the pilot wards that we're running in Morriston. We're not doing it on all the wards, so we need to expand into those areas. We know that our weekend discharging numbers are not good, and we have a weekend discharge team in place, and we're looking at how we refocus what they're doing and building a process that runs essentially from Thursday right the way through to Monday, so we can get that weekend team delivering at a high level than we needed to. We know that the work that is being done around improving the battle rhythm within Morriston Hospital around the bed meetings is having an impact on engagements with teams and getting better information in the daytime. And as I said, this is having an impact. And on the handover 45s, our target of 80% between 7 o'clock and 7 in the evening, we're about 75.4%. We were a couple of days ago. Hopefully we've improved a bit since then. So we're not yet at the target that we need to be, but it is better than we have been. And within the ED itself, Andrew and I were talking about this earlier on. They are doing things in ED that will have an impact. So they are doing the internal professional standards. We now have zoning, which includes a criteria to reside area. The consultants in charge remit is clearer. They have weekly performance and information meetings to look at how they can improve. And we are looking, with the work that Kerry Matthews has been leading through the nurses, of using August as a reset week. I had conversations with Mark Poulden and Rodri to talk about speeding up the wait to be seen times
because we know we have capacity in the medical side to get in and take patients when they're pulling out. So at the moment, I think the assurance is there that we're doing the right actions. They are showing improvement. We need that to run at scale because we're not yet achieving what we need to achieve on that side. So I'm going to stop there on the ED bit. I think I picked up the alert section as well. On the COPS bit, we talked about the COPS as part of the what are we doing over summer and getting ready for winter. I did just want to mention or probably reiterate that the impact, which was one of the alert questions, is both on the individual patient who is in delay and the patients who can't access that capacity because of that delay. And we talked earlier, didn't we, about muscle wastage reducing by 2% a day. There are studies on this that are quite extensive to talk about deconditioning and deterioration, but there's also a psychosocial impact, whereas people lose their independence, their ability to manage at home reduces, and that has a big impact on them, their family, their neighbours, their cat, and we need to start working on that. And I think I feel encouraged by the news that we got today, that the work that has been done, especially on P1 patients, is really starting to deliver. What we don't seem to be doing is taking full advantage of that delivery. And whilst the numbers are still high, we need to get them down. We need to show what we're doing for the rest of the patients, not just the patients who are the specific domain. So that's the next action. I think that covers the COPS and the UEC bit and picks up the alerts.
Thank you, John. Any questions on that section? Okay, can we move on to workforce? Over to you, Emma.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. So from a workforce perspective, I wanted to highlight an issue really in terms of one of our key breakthrough objectives, which is around sickness absence. So you'll all be familiar that we are experiencing a challenging position in terms of reducing our sickness absence. We've seen our absence levels increasing, particularly over the last few months. This is mirrored across Wales. So we know that there is a significant challenge that we have in terms of some of the population health challenges that we've got, in addition to how we adopt more preventative measures in terms of sickness absence. So from a national perspective, we are standing up a All Wales Task and Finish group, whereby we can collectively share ideas in terms of how are we going to address some of the challenges that we are all experiencing. As a health board, we're still committed to making sure whether we've got robust governance arrangements and to make sure that our leaders are supporting their staff appropriately. We've got good information in terms of the sickness absence review process, and we're continuing to collaborate with our staff side colleagues and our key stakeholders in terms of what else can we do to try to address the sickness charges that we're experiencing. In terms of the alerts that have been raised, 7 alerts have come from the Workforce and OD Committee. The majority of them relate to the staffing challenges that we're experiencing. And in relation to that, there's 4 alerts specifically linking in with our strategic workforce plan, addressing the workforce reduction plans that we've got and the recruitment challenges that we're currently experiencing. So as an organisation, we continue to be committed to delivering our strategic workforce plan, and we acknowledge the challenge and the impact in doing so. And again, we're collaborating with our key stakeholders to make sure that we're achieving that in a sensible manner. We are beginning to see progress in terms of the enhanced controls that we've adopted, and it's important to note that as at month 3, our workforce growth was the lowest growth across Wales. So as a health board, our growth was 1.3%. So we're beginning to see the traction or the measures that we've put in place. In terms of the alerts that aren't linked to the recruitment challenges and the strategic workforce plan, it's important for me to note that there's one there in terms of organised for success and the timescales associated with it. As a health board, we've now signed off on a robust plan, which will be delivered to the next workforce and OD committee.
Are you expecting anyone to come in?
No, well, I just, you know, we are, you'll see in the financial report operationally, that grip and control around vacancies and maintaining that is certainly starting to play into the position. But it does remain, you know, for the rest of the year, that will be a key area of focus for us as an organisation.
That's when we get there, we can explain given that we're taking down the workforce headcount by 800 short-term equivalents, how we then have growth. I know it's quite difficult to explain this, isn't it? The 1.3% growth, but yet we're going to be taking the head, but there are reasons for it, I understand that. So perhaps Claire, we'll pick that up when we look at the finance agenda, yeah?
Okay, so that concludes the exec feedback on the integrated performance report. We do have a finance section for the
Yeah.
figures on the IPR, but obviously we have a separate. Oh, yeah, the two that didn't fall under.
Audit committee, one related to Morrison Service Group governance arrangements, limited assurance report. This was received in the July committee, and also a number of the actions have already been completed, but also from a health board perspective, we are looking at operational governance arrangements and aiming to strengthen them and putting them requirements in place for the service groups. There's also an alert relating to Audit Wales findings around the reporting of executive director appointments due to board for substantive agreements. We've changed our process and that will happen now going forward.
And Maria, was there anything you wanted to add on alerts from Audit Committee?
No, I think Hazel has covered it well. I think that for me, it's about I think that it's about the fact that the audit committee, following on from those alerts, has a couple of things that would like to raise to board that where we would seek your endorsement, and I can run through them now. I can wait until later.
Yeah.
We did take a stroke presentation through to Performance and Finance Committee. We received a reassurance largely from our lead stroke commission, but last.
Are there anything else from PFC and on stroke particularly?
From anything on stroke?
Particularly?
I mean, we have ongoing concerns about the internal data. What we saw in the committee was the 25-26 data in comparison to Wales, where, you know, they were areas of strength. I think it's really showing the whole of Wales is extremely poor, which isn't, you know, doesn't give you that much, but it is, yes. So we saw more positivity there. We were a bit concerned about the action section. We'd like that to be kind of strengthened because you know, there's a lot of continuation of current stroke pathway improvements, but internally we haven't seen much traction on change. Sorry, Mick, do you want to go?
Yeah, there were two areas where we asked them to come back with proposals for improvement in particular, and that was pathway for head CT and also ring-fenced stroke.
Yes,
it's to ring-fenced stroke base. So we recognise that those were the two areas which were inside the control of the team.
Yeah, and John was going to have a look at the ring-fenced bed situation when you and come and report back to PFC. So is that on the 24/7 stroke consultancy, which we've been looking at, but they were looking regionally for that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Rena?
There was also the point which I think was very valid. I think Andrew looked at it was how are our outcomes from stroke patients compared to other health boards?
That's right.
Because it's not about just having access to the bed, which I think was well made.
Yeah.
It's about having sufficient and quick treatment in terms of, you know, physio, occupational therapy, or whatever people have. And I do think that was, so he said he would come back and look at those.
Yes,
In terms of outcome.
Well remembered.
Steve thought that. Is it Steve? Oh, sorry.
Liz come in and then I turn to Mary. Liz?
And we've had a number of presentations on stroke at our Quality and Safety Committee, haven't we, Jean?
Sorry, I missed that.
We've had a number of presentations on stroke. And what we're very keen to see is what the improvement trajectory is. So I get that this absolutely compares us to the rest of Wales, but there is a national audit on stroke, which we must be part of.
It was the SNAP.
It was national.
It was a snap, but that we on an all Wales basis,
On a UK basis.
on a UK-wide basis.
We perform better in other parts of the UK.
So that's what we need to understand and then monitor where we need to improve. So I think that's what we need to take back through QNS from a quality, safety and outcomes perspective, that SNAP data and what our plans are to improve to be comparable on a UK-wide basis, because it is about equity, etc. I think that's what, I'm not, but I just think that's what we need to be focusing on at QNS.
If I may just add from Pat's statement, we were concerned that the data is not compatible with what we're seeing in terms of the similarity between SNAP data and where we are. The overriding concern was we seem to be having repetitive conversations about how stroke is doing, whether it's thrombolysis or not, and nothing is changing for us. I think that was the overriding concern.
The data that goes into SNAP is a 12-month picture, whereas we see month on month, and that provides obviously different results. And I suppose we've just been looking at stroke month on month for a very long period of time and not really seeing the traction. But those are big issues, aren't they? The ring fence bed is a massive issue. The on-call 24/7 was a big issue, which has not been addressed, or we haven't been able to address. I think.
Didn't we agree at last board meeting that we do some more work on this and bring it back? And I think.
So we did, that was what we brought back.
Yeah.
through to-
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But just, so we did talk about the combined regional stroke rota, which I think stroke colleagues across the region are open to and keen to discuss, and there have been some really promising discussions. One of the big constraints to that is in the Hywel Dda footprint, there are 3 acute sites, and those clinicians with an interest in stroke are part of the acute intake rota, and taking them off and putting them on a separate stroke rota would make those rotas non-viable. For us also, there would be a challenge as well. So we have to recognise that, you know, whilst there is a desirability around that, we may need to look at other options for how we achieve the same outcome.
I do think we have to bring this back into quality and safety, because we seem to be going round in circles.
So we have action both for quality and safety and the follow-up work that you've got underway through PLC as well on that one. So Marie, was there anything else that you all wanted to pick up?
No, I think
No?
we covered.
Okay, so we've considered the IPR, we've looked across the domains, quality, safety and performance, recognising we're coming on to finance separately. So John, we've identified the work that you have underway in UBC and the further actions that you have, particularly around Morrison. We've got actions specifically on stroke involving both QSD and PFC. And then Matt and Claire, you know, we regularly have issues around data accuracy, completeness, reliability. So can we ask you to take that back? And particularly with DDRI as well, it's come up now in terms of stroke, but in terms of, you know, do we have the absolute spot on data sources we need as this agenda develops? Is that
Sitting with
Yeah.
Andrew now.
Was that, is that with Andrew?
Yeah.
Oh,
So we'll be
great.
getting.
So, yeah, that's then it's not you.
Keep an eye on them if you like.
And through Andrew too. So if we move then to what is always one of our most important items on finance.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll provide a summary of the financial position as at month 3, highlight the key drivers of performance, outline some of the principal risks and mitigation actions, and conclude with the assurances of support requested from the board. Members will be aware that the Health Board submitted a 3-year plan for 2026-27 until 28-29. However, that plan included a deficit of 76.6 million in 2026-27 and therefore does not satisfy our statutory requirement to achieve financial balance. Consequently, neither the Health Board nor Welsh Government has been able to approve the financial plan. Turning to the current position, as at the end of June, the Health Board reported an in-month deficit of 7.1 million and a year-to-date deficit of 23.3 million. The capital position showed a modest underspend of 654,000 year-to-date, and the non-NHS payment compliance of 97% exceeded the public sector payment policy target of 95%. Whilst these figures remain consistent with the overall direction of travel anticipated within the plan, performance is behind where we need it to be and remains a matter of concern. From a revenue perspective, the key headline that is in month 3, the deficit stood at 7.1 million. We undertook a forecast for month 3 and we forecast a 6.4 million outturn, so we were 0.8 million worse than we were expecting. And the principal reasons for this variances continues to be the underlying delivery of savings. So our planned savings requirement for 26-27 is 65 million. And during month 3, we delivered 2.9 million of savings against a target of 5.4 million. Consequently, we have delivered 5.8 million against an expected 16.3 million, leaving a sizable year-to-date shortfall of 10.4 million. The saving gap remains the single most material driver of the Health Board's financial position. From an operational driver's perspective, there were several operational factors affecting the month 3 position. Firstly, continuing healthcare expenditure increased during the month, particularly within mental health and learning disabilities, and it was in both patient numbers but also in the average cost. The CHC growth has been identified as an area of risk and is included in our forecast risk position. Secondly, prescribing costs were adversely affected by the national No Cheaper Stock Obtainable, or the NCSO position. This relates to medicine shortages and high procurement costs and generated a 0.3 million pressure during the month of June. Thirdly, temporary adult placements reduced in number from 18 at the beginning of June until 11 at the month end. However, the financial benefit was limited because the most expensive placements remain in place. Members should also note some positive movement that was achieved though. There was a reduction in variable pay from 4.7 million to 4.4 million. We ended our consultancy contract during June and we had favourable LTA performance. Whilst welcomed, these improvements have not been sufficient to offset wider financial pressures and the savings gap. Recognising these challenges, significant work is underway through the Recovery and Sustainability Programme and in particular on the opportunities pipeline. The Recovery and Sustainability Board continues to oversee the progress and the delivery unit is undertaking check and challenge reviews across each thematic work stream. Financial escalation meetings have now been taken across the service groups. We meet fortnightly and that has generated an additional 6 million of savings opportunities, which we've added to the tracker. And in addition, the weekly executive team is keeping a close oversight of variable pay, non-pay controls and restrictions, and also pay restrictions, and further interventions to strengthen the delivery pipeline. The board should recognise that the challenge is no longer identifying opportunities alone. The focus must also be on the pace and certainty around the delivery. In relation to the capital, cash and balance sheets, the approved capital resource limit for 26-27 is 54.9 million. Current forecasts indicate a small underspend of 0.9 million, principally linked to delivery profiles across a small number of major schemes. The cash balance remains stable at 3.821 million at the end of June and is within the tolerance levels. And in relation to the balance sheet, the most notable movement is the increase in receivables, largely driven by the Welsh Risk Pool. Members will be aware of the finance risk HPR 92, and this remains one of the highest Health Board's risks, scored at 25. And our principal risks to deliver the financial plan remain, which is delivering our savings programme, the ongoing CHC pressures, the primary care prescribing pressures driven by NCSO impacts, the potential financial consequences of the resident doctor contract, energy cost volatility, and the wider operational pressures that exceed available funding. Whilst progress continues, management's assessment is the substantial level of risk remains within the RED and pipeline savings programme. We have undertaken a detailed year forecast, and we shared this with PFC on the 28th of July. And we've also undertaken weekly scrutiny with the NHS P&I team and recently had a meeting on the 24th of July. In conclusion, month 3 demonstrates that the Health Board remains really financially challenged, and the underlying position is dominated by the scale of the savings challenge, both in plan but also in delivery, the continuing healthcare growth pressures, including the national prescribing pressures, and the requirement to accelerate the delivery of existing recovery plans. We have actions in place, and they're also overseen through the Recovery and Sustainability Board. Additional savings have been identified. However, the risk remains high towards the latter quarter and the rest of the year. Therefore, I will ask the board to acknowledge the financial position and the associated statutory challenges, to consider and comment on the month 3 financial position, to support the actions being taken to address the savings gap, and to discuss and to note the financial risk in the financial plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Would you like to come in and give us PFC analysis at the end of quarter 1, please, as usual? Now we're going into month 5 next week.
Maybe Claire's cover both bits, but I'll just some highlights from the conversation we had in PFC. In terms of the savings plan development, obviously, as Claire's mentioned, we had 30.9 million or 48% in green and amber at the end of quarter 3. The forecasters at the 17th of July was that we would be 40.9 million by the end of the year. Noting 75% of that is recurrent, that's 30.7 million. So we were 34.3 million below the value needed to support the recurrent plan moving into 27-28. So we've got around the 24 million pound shortfall at this point in the year. Recognise where that is, but we have to know the full 65 million has to be in place in green and amber by the end of month 6. So the challenge is very significant. And we did agree with the delivery unit, etc., that I think it would be useful for PFC or even board actually to have deep dives on certain exact-led theme areas, which would largely be medical workforce, planned care, nursing workforce and procurement in a fairly timely way. If we could have those reviews on those areas, I think it might be helpful. And we possibly need to think about how we fit that in very early September. The key risk is seen, as Claire has said, and as shared by the delivery unit, it's about the savings delivery is the absolute key risk. As Claire noted, with 5.8 million against a target of 16.3, as at the end of month 3, we've asked for a profile of the schemes in green and amber, what the profile of delivery is, which finance provided to us. So at the end of month 4, we should be at 10.1 million savings delivered. At the end of month 6, 18.1, etc., and going up to month 12, which will be 14.9 currently. That's what's from green and amber. We have asked that that information is supplied to us now on a theme or scheme by scheme basis, so it can be linked to accountabilities, etc. So, and finance is now working on that, how best to present that to us, without providing us with a full spreadsheet. How we can best see that, and that's what we've asked for moving forward. We did ask about double counting again between service groups and themes. We were given assurance that there is governance in place that reduces that risk significantly. We did focus in the meeting on the letter from Jacqueline Tofsdale, Welsh Government, noting that a lot of those requests are very much aligned with what PFC's been discussing. So the particular ones we looked at was that green and amber schemes are robustly developed, deliverable and supported by clear milestones and accountabilities. Hence, we're asking for the planned savings profile versus delivery information on a scheme basis, with accountabilities from month 4. Importantly, assurance on the full opportunity pipeline, including the basis of identification, the confidence of delivery, the expected phasing, the key dependencies, and how the pipeline has been assessed and prioritised. Understanding those dependencies is going to be critical. Some of those big savings as we move into years 2 and 3, there's going to be an investor save aspect to those. So there's going to be critical dependencies for those. So that's going to be very important. Claire's talked about how the ongoing assessment of risks, and really was very clear in the meeting that greater focus now on recurrent savings and the impact of those schemes as we move into year 2 and 3, that focus is going to be critical. We are seeing an increased reliance on non-recurrent in this year, and that's going to make the future years more challenging than we see. We did take a lot of assurance from the RNS report in terms of the governance that's been put in, enhanced accountabilities and escalation that's in place now with the executive savings themes in line with the performance accountability framework. 6 million coming through the savings pipeline in the last month, the strengthening of the governance, the review of operating arrangements, all of which is really, really positive. But at this point, PFC is not assured with regard to the delivery of the 65 million. And really, we're waiting to see. There is a critical risk around that. And really, we're waiting to see that starting to come through as we go through months 4 before that kind of assurance will kick in.
Thank you, Pat. I'll come to John first before other members of the PFC, given that Pat referenced savings delivery being a concern to the delivery units as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for all that as well, because I had pretty much an awful lot of that written down as well. So I think that was very handy. So I think there are 2 things. I think Pat's point around we now can see where we can take the money out, but how we get it out is the real key bit. And there are people who are struggling with that, and we are trying to support them through the delivery unit on doing it. It's pretty much as the tyre hits the road, becomes a little bit more of a struggle for them. And there are still the areas that you talked about where there are big concerns where we can't yet see where we're going to get some money. There's been some improvement in that, and it is good to see that we're at month 4. We're at 40, just over 40%. We've got 2 more months we need to get the rest in. Within the delivery unit, and I appreciate what you said around how we're operating. I've done a capacity and capability review of it, and that's under consideration at the moment, which is intended on increasing the amount of resource that will be direct support to people. And I also welcome the PFC's scrutiny of the areas that we need to look at. So I think the issues that we need to do are clear, and I think we can demonstrate that we are doing them. There is a concern I've got that's based on other organisations when they get to this point. We need to make sure of 2 things. One is this is a collective problem. So we all need to be involved in it. It's not just me or Claire that is delivering all this. It's a collective exec problem. And I think we are aware of that. And I can't talk for anybody else, but sometimes it feels like just the delivery unit is doing it. It isn't. You know, we're doing it across it. And the other one is, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater on this. We can't just deliver on the finance. We've talked about all the other things that we need to deliver. And that's, I think, important just to every now and again stop and recognise, because as you've said, Pat, some of the things that we're going to do will be invest to save. I don't think the organisation is hearing the invest bit. I think they're just hearing the save bit. And we need to have grown-up conversations with them around how we take this forward. So in UEC, for example, the things that I've talked about around the work that they're doing on flow and on the 4 and 12 hour targets in ED, they're also facing well, we've got to close 3 wards. How are we going to do that? Well, there is a better conversation we can have about the savings that you have by decompressing the site and the amount of money that you're spending on that compression going away. And then how do we deliver on? So I think we've got the story right. I think we know what actions we need to do. I think the engagement with the organisation on how you deliver those actions, that's to me where I think we need to concentrate, because that's the bit with the risk.
Okay, and Richard, I'm going to carry on a little minute, but when we come to the end, can you think about what the engagement plan needs to look like, really, once we've finished all the messaging? Okay, so thank you, John. So members of PFC then. Steve, do you want to come in?
You know, Pat's pretty much summed everything up. The concern I would have is, she's already alluded to it. We probably will get to 65 million of identified amber green savings within the next couple of months. That's great. But that's 6 months into the year. We've only got 6 months to realise that we've got to start delivering them. And the more you back end towards the end of the year, as Jean's favourite word from the PFC meeting, the more you back end, the more difficult that becomes. So that's the real challenge. Months 7 to 12 have a great deal of savings delivery required from them in order for us to meet this objective. There's some big areas where savings are just not really being identified yet. Those are the big workforce areas of medical and nurse and procurement also. We have to start finding savings there, preferably in this year, because to the extent that we're not finding savings in those areas, we're plugging the gap with non-recurrent stuff, which is fine. I mean, we'll get to 65 maybe, but next year is going to start off in the worst case than this year started off. We'll be doing this over again 12 months from now.
Steve, Rena, then Jean. Rena.
I just wanted to clarify the position in the sense of the workforce committee, because you said earlier, Jan, we had reference to the staff numbers. They have reduced. What we are showing is that we as a health board have got the lowest growth in pay, not in terms of the staff numbers. The staff numbers have gone down, but pay costs are still continuing to rise, and they particularly variable pay in terms has continued to rise. So in month 2 in particular, I think, Claire, wasn't it? Variable pay?
So month 2, it was at 4.7, month 3, it's come down to 4.4. So we've seen a slight reduction of 300,000 in month.
So I think what I wanted to make the point, Steve is right, because where our money is in the workforce. So in a way, if we are going to make those recurrent savings, we've really got to move on with that strategic workforce plan to get our numbers down. And the problem we had, and up here, see it came through from the service group coming to us. We had mental health and Morrison, wasn't it, at PFC? Yeah. And they were saying they were all struggling to find those recurrent savings as opposed to the one-offs. And they had quite substantial figures still to identify in both those service groups.
And Pat, you've got 2 alerts.
Yeah, I mean, we had alerts on the other committees, which was mental health, learning difficulties and PCT for a similar issue last month, sorry, I can't remember the figures. This time, Neath Talbot Singleton has a savings shortfall of 15.7 million, both this year and currently. And Morriston has a shortfall of 12.3 million in the current year and 14.8 million currently. They both are working with the theme areas. They said we're both proactively working with theme leads, and we will continue to do so. But all service groups are still reporting significant saving shortfalls, which I suppose you can expect that, can't we? We've got them at top level and through. So,
And can I just ask, tomorrow's the end of month 4. Do we have any sense yet? So it should be 10.1 million in month 4. Do we have any sense what you might have achieved in month 4?
Not yet, but what I have seen is that this has been an exceptional month in terms of extreme heat. We have seen pressure around the ED, and therefore that we have seen a slight increase in some of the areas on variable pay as a consequence. But I don't have the month end yet. But equally, I would say that the savings plans are starting to kick in. So what we are starting to see is some of those reductions in total workforce. But the reality is we have to, and as it's Rena's last call as well, and Anisha's going to come in on the recurrent element of the savings. The manning reductions that we are building into our plans are the key to the recurrently delivering those savings, and actually maintaining that level of pace is what we now need to do quarter by quarter, as the colleagues in PFC raised as well.
There's a couple of things for me here, and I'm not going to rehearse the numbers because Pat very eloquently and very diligently does a superb job at summarising what PFC decide. But I think there are a couple of things for me. We've talked long and hard about going back to basics, which Claire's done a lot of work with the service groups with. But if we think about where we are now, we're talking about we're not having recurrent savings delivered, etc. We're going to rely on non-recurrent. That's a behavioural concept that we've developed over many years, and we have to move away from that. So I think we have to think about, sorry about that, the maturing of the way in which we are forecasting and using our budgets. We should be adopting the approach that says, if we persist in back-ending everything, we end up with the same problems that we start with a financial position that is just insurmountable. And I've seen that now over 3 years that I've been on the board. So we have to think about the maturing of the way in which we forecast, we deliver budget setting, and that will include the idealisation of how do we meet these exceptional challenges. They are exceptional, but we have them almost every year. So they are now becoming par for the course. So it's this kind of thinking mentality and going back to the way in which we mature our budget setting process that I don't think we are really undertaking. And on John's point, we certainly are not optimising economy of scale management when we continue to work in silo service group delivery.
I'll ask Nuru to come in, then I'm going to turn to Abby because, the actions now required are even more urgent as we move into month.
I'm going to keep this very brief. I think that for me, there is what John explained is actually key in terms of the next stages, and that is around grasping the opportunity that Organising for Success gives us to really align the culture and the finance element of the next step forwards. And I think there's a real opportunity here around that cultural cohesion, financial accountability, and what that looks like and how that might impact on financial delivery. And maybe that is an update that we can have around clarity and shared responsibility, which I think is what we're after. And I think that for me is where the real opportunity lies, in doing things differently, because a lot of what we're describing is things that we've tried that haven't actually worked. But I think we have a real opportunity in the way that we're thinking about Organising for Success to actually bring the financial accountability and the workforce sustainability and the new ways of working together.
Abby.
That's a really helpful point, Nerea, for me to kick off. So absolutely get that, Nerea. And I think the work that Claire's previously described and is referenced in this report demonstrates that we are in a different place, notwithstanding what you say, Jean, about needing to continue to mature that in terms of how we set budgets, is it how we've provided the training that when we're signing budgets over to individuals, that they understand their accountability and responsibility. You've seen coming through the integrated performance report how we are strengthening performance and accountability through the organisation. Organised for success builds on that. I'll say it now, because I want to come back to another point. The work on cultural shift and cultural change. Heather, we've had some interesting conversations in health, in our health partnership forum, which has been really positive actually. The last Ask Abby session was the highest attended I think we've ever had. Quite 170, 180 people came along. That was some quite difficult conversations. Staff were worried about redundancies. It was useful to have very open, we answer any question in that forum, and people can ask them anonymously. So we talked about how we take the workforce through us as we right size and reshape. Tina's starting to develop a piece of work on cultural change in the organisation to make sure absolutely we're an organisation that faces into these things, and that we're kind of not characterised by learning campuses, which we've tried that before and not been able to get it over the line, and therefore we're coming back around the loop again. I do see green shoots right across the organisation in terms of maturity of this. The bits that we have that we absolutely need to triangulate is that workforce numbers do need to show the budget run rate coming down. We do need to, as you say, Pat, give you confidence around that trajectory now of taking the spend out. Now we've got things into green and amber, and finance business partners working with the service group leads to make sure we're able to transact that. We talked at the last Recovery and Sustainability Board meeting. Actually, Coalition was very engaged in this conversation about a series of sessions where we will bring pipeline ideas and keep adding to the pipeline, but also speeding up things that we may have in grey that we need to accelerate through the pipeline, as well as keeping our foot on the things that are where the opportunity that we originally identified is not where it needs to be in terms of the programme of work. There comes a point where we go, if that's based on Deloitte may have identified that the opportunity was here, but for whatever reason and factors, once we really scrutinise those, in this year we can only deliver X. If you take CH as a prime example of that, we've said we'd absorb growth, and it's a relatively modest saving. Deloitte think there's more to go at as part of that strategic recommissioning programme that we need to undertake. So we're going to do that, recognising we're in August and we need to get that pipeline completed by the end of September. So there will be some intensive work over the next 6 weeks to enable us to do that. Of course, it will be the first item on the agenda with our escalation board meeting, which is next Thursday. So we'll bring back and provide an update of that conversation and any further actions over and above what we've already described. And we'll bring that into the IA briefing the following week.
Thank you. So I'm going to conclude that bit now. And then Richard, you talk us through how we can turn that into messaging. So I think, we've obviously acknowledged the serious financial challenge that we're facing, and the fact that we understand from Welsh Government and we think ourselves that our current position is unacceptable and unsupportable. That is a position the board shares. So we are in a position to take assurance that we have put enhanced accountabilities and escalation arrangements into the system in line with the performance and accountability framework. We are seeing an increase in the pipeline, and we have strengthened governance, programme management and pipeline controls. And we are reviewing the operating arrangements that we have. So we are looking to see how can we strengthen capacity, capability, accountability and delivery focus. However, given the position at the end of Q1, the board is not in a position to take assurance around the delivery of 65 million savings at this point. The discussions this afternoon have indicated, and we've been advised by PFC, that there is a critical delivery risk around the conversion of opportunities into cash releasing savings, supported by clear accountabilities, benefits realisation, and the active management of delivery actions and risks, and the capacity and capability to deliver at the required pace. And Pat, we talked about PFC undertaking deep dives into medical workforce, planned care, nursing workforce, and procurement. We talked about whether that needed to be a full board. And really I take members' view on that, because we are in this together. This is a collective issue. We are a unitary board, and the delivery agenda is one that we all share. So can we agree that the full board, or however many of us can congregate in August to do this, will do this deep dive work? And then we will be then remitting back to PFC in September. But we move into month 5 next week. And from everything you've said, Claire, I couldn't take assurance that we're going to be 10.1 million savings. I know the knows it's not in yet, we don't know, but given the pressures in the system, etc., we may not be getting back on track in month 4.
So, month 4, we've predicted that we would achieve a outturn position of better than month 3. We would be going in at 0.2 better than the current position. So we will start to see that downward trend. The key to it, though, is we now should start to see the delivery of those savings plans. And that's what else.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So is that fair? Because we know the intent is there, we know the commitment is there, and we know that we understand and we own what we need to do. There is a massive operational delivery risk that we have to get on top of now before we get into the second half of the year, as Steve and Julie have set out so eloquently. So, Richard, recognising that our people out there are working very hard day in, day out, and they are up against it, particularly they have been with the extreme heat conditions. Could you just talk the board through your advice on the messaging?
Yes, certainly, Chair. So I think that's a really important point you just made around the balance there and how hard people are working, because the challenge is always that we are communicating really, really tough messages, and clearly we need people to act and to do things differently in order to make savings. And there's a balance between actually flagging up the challenges that we face, but also motivating people to act in the right way and to make a difference. I think there are 3 sort of ways in which we are communicating. So one is via management, governance, accountability routes. And clearly we've heard a bit now about how that's been strengthened. And I think, there's an important role there for things like performance reviews, etc., and the RNS board. But separate to that, there's the corporate messaging, and then there's the campaigning. And I just want to differentiate between those 2 things, if I may. So on the corporate messaging, I think we need to ratchet that up over the next month or so, leading into September, where I think there'll be more impact then as we head into the autumn period. There's lots of opportunities for us in terms of the messaging there that we need to do more, and we need to deliver more of the pipeline and actual savings. We do that through midweek message, team brief, top 100. We also do it externally to a certain extent as well in terms of the MSNP briefing to raise awareness of the challenges that we face there. Just coming back to what Arby said about the Ask Arby last week, I think that was a really, really important session. We had about 190 people there, which was the most that we've had, as Arby said. And I think we need to gauge and sort of take on board the feedback from that, but also to use it going forwards to really convey those really important messages. The flip side to that is the campaigning side of things. So I just want to draw attention to that as well. In the autumn, we'll reinvigorate the Making Every Pound Count campaign, because I think that's a counterbalance to the corporate messaging, because the balance of the Making Every Pound Count campaign is about we can do this, but there are lots of really good ways of saving money on a recurrent basis. There's success stories, case studies, etc. So we will refresh that campaign in the autumn so that we're again giving people a positive sort of exemplars of how these changes can be made. So that's a sort of threefold approach: corporate messaging, campaigning, and the governance systems.
Thank you, Richard. That's really comprehensive. Abby, did you want to add anything to that? Or you think, no, I think that's, you know,
Really helpful.
yeah, and we'll hit a number of different audiences. Thank you. So we again agree, and thank you, and we can ask you to put action now, please, as you set out. So we move now to our perinatal section of the agenda. And we are going to begin with our perinatal committee report, and welcome Fiona. Liz, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. We've also been joined by Kathy Greaves and Sue Joy as well on screen. We've got the whole team here. And I was just reflecting before I start really with the...
Sorry, Denise is also joined.
Sorry, I didn't see Denise.
Denise, Croeso Mawr, very warm welcome. We can't see you on the screen as yet. Oh yes, there you are.
Yeah.
So lovely to have you with us this afternoon. We're just beginning this section. So we've got Sujoy and Kathy Greaves with us on screen as well with you, and then Fiona is in the room with us. So Liz is just about to start with the perinatal committee report.
I have a full complement then here today, and I was just reflecting, it's a year since we took our first perinatal committee report board, and I've just been thinking about how it's evolved and how we've shaped it together with support from the service, with the teams, but also with the support of the oversight panel. And the committee report will continue to evolve, and with the clinical input that we have, we will ensure that we continue to be able to demonstrate assurance against quality safety outcomes, but also highlight risks to that and what we are doing about it. So we have made improvements, and we can demonstrate that across quality and safety indicators. That has been supported by stronger governance, and I think that is the key to this. Stronger governance, which will be there now and is set in our governance structure. We know that HIW have been in and acknowledged clear progress in safety systems, leadership, escalation processes, and multidisciplinary team working. We know that moderate or severe HIE cases, none of them have been, we were then reported in 2026, and we know there's been a sustained reduction. There's a whole section of the report on that, and always is. Perinatal mortality indicators continue to improve and are in line with comparable UK-wide organisations, and we have robust embrace reporting. The workforce and staffing headlines really, because workforce and the culture of that workforce and the way that they work together is key to delivery. So stat and mandatory training compliance is strong, and we are exceeding the Welsh Government target of 85% in many areas, above 90%. Medical workforce compliance has improved, so thanks to Sujoy and his teams for ensuring that that happens. And we do have workforce pressures, but we manage them on a daily basis from a medical perspective, but also from a midwifery perspective. And we have seen flexible working and adaptability from our teams to ensure that we can manage that. We have had some workforce gaps in obstetrics and career breaks, but we've successfully managed to cover those with no impact on service. I've talked about training compliance, including prompt fetal surveillance, neonatal life support and safeguarding. And we know where we feature on an all Wales basis in those areas, and it is positive. Patient experience and engagement. We do have good friends and family test satisfaction reported, but we are not content with that. Our engagement with our community is key to us understanding what the needs of our women and families are, and co-production is a key element of how we're going to continue to take our improvements forward. We have now got a single point of access for maternity with a unit dedicated midwifery staff. But we know that there's still more to do around that from a call handling perspective, etc. But we monitor through the BSOTS process, the Birmingham Specific Obstetric Triage System. I hope Kathy's proud of me because I got it right. There are key risks, and we are continuing to focus on workforce capacity pressures, particularly in our postnatal wards, and we know the challenges that a rise in C-sections has had on that postnatal care delivery. We've got still to resolve the paediatric radiology issue, but we have got a mitigation in place that is working for us. And two-site service configuration is absolutely a risk that is on our corporate risk register, and we're working through strategic options for that in the future. So perinatal committee report has come a long way. I think it enables the board to take some assurance, but also to have information to challenge where you think that isn't the case. And I just want to thank the team, particularly at this time, for helping to create a report that comes to board through quality and safety every time we meet, ensuring that maternity and neonatal services, our perinatal services, are at the heart of this organisation. And I think Raj and I are happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Gina, I'll just ask you anything to add from the Chair of QSC perspective?
I think what's improved is the systematic way in which we take information from quality and safety group. But not only that, we are continuing to revise how we measure not only the outcomes, but how we're going to close the evidence that those outcomes have been dealt with, and the resultant benefit that they add to the service group in itself. We still have some way to go, and we've identified things like strengthening the external communication that we undertake with families, etc. So there are one or two of the recommendations that we are still working through and want to progress in terms of the way in which we give evidence of what we're doing, so that we don't just say it, but people can see it and know that they belong to it. So I think for us, it's been a huge learning opportunity in quality and safety. And it's also helped us think about the way in which we address quality improvement. But there is still a huge piece of work to do in terms of anti-racism, discrimination practices, etc., etc. But we have that on our radar now. So I think that's down to the team, etc., for the diligence with which they've worked with the oversight panel as well.
Thank you. And we mentioned earlier that Teresa Obekula would be working with our mental health transformation programme. She worked with the MatNeo programme as well. This is our new associate board member for those on screen, Teresa Obekulu. She's an associate board member, inclusion and belonging. She's just joined us, and she will be looking at perinatal services, working alongside programme there, looking exactly to make sure that our services are culturally responsive, that we do recognise experiences and look really across our population. So Jean, thank you for that. And we know that QSC will give her a very warm welcome as well. So I'll open it up to questions or comments on the actual perinatal committee, please. Rena, you had one on triage?
Yeah. I suppose I wanted to seek more assurance, because obviously the report from the oversight panel and some comments within the perinatal committee report suggests that there's still some misunderstandings about where calls ought to go. And I just felt, and also of whether staff were fully on board with how the system was going to work. So I was seeking to get more assurance as to how we were doing that, and that we were engaging with staff to make sure that the staff involved in answering the calls are fully conversant with what system we're using, and also that patients
or I've actually got the right path to follow.
Thank you. Thank you. Kathy, perhaps you'd like to come in on that, because we've been looking at, obviously, setting up the single point of access is really, really important. But we have been looking at how easy is it for people to navigate, and for our midwives who are actually operating it. You know, they have clinical commitments as well. So what exactly does that mean in terms of being able to be there to answer the phone, for example? We know there are a number of different options that women can choose because of different stages of their journey, obviously. So it'd be good for you to talk us through your thinking really, where we are now, and your plans for sort of future improvement of the single point of access.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Rena, for the question, very important question. I think that what we can recognise is in terms of maternity triage at Swansea Bay, we have come a considerable way. The implementation of the single point of access telephone system is another mechanism by which we can ensure women are getting to the right place at the right time so that we can respond to the concerns that they have. One of the things that we recognise, Rena, is that we have a cohort of women who will have had pregnancies with us previously and will have saved telephone numbers into their phones where they traditionally might have tried to contact us as a service. So one of the things that has happened is that both our executive colleagues and within the service, we have been working to close down those numbers so that the single point of access does become the point where women are accessing us, and we've actually tested that system to make sure that that change has occurred, and I can report that positively that has. In terms of our staff, the BSOT's implementation took place in November of 24, and we have a dedicated team of midwives who work in the triage area because there is a particular skill set that is required of those clinicians in managing those calls and also providing clinical triage for women when they report into our service. So our teams are very dedicated in those areas. It's not a place where we will rotate in people who are not used to working in that area for those very reasons. We also recognise, which is why our Women's Health Experience Midwife has been surveying women who are using our system in single point of access, how easy that is for them to access the services in the right way. And whilst some women acknowledge that the menus options can be lengthy until they get to the option that they need, they recognise it's still been very simple for them to get through to our services, and that's been very positively received by those women who we are surveying to understand what that means for us. But that doesn't mean that as a service we don't understand that are there things that we can do that might make that simpler, and we do review those regularly to see if we need to make any adjustments to that system. In terms of our community teams, then there was a large launch around triage and what that is, but as with anything, you can't send a message once and expect everybody to maintain that message. And so the frequency by which we are communicating with our teams to ensure that that is reiterated is really very important, and that's also something that we are doing as a service.
Thank you. Yeah, is that okay? Anything further you want to follow up on?
No, that's fine.
Any other points or comments or Andrew?
Yeah, just following on from the triage system, I'm just wondering how well integrated the triage system is into Badgernet and getting that complete picture.
Well, I'm going to defer to the expert on Badgernet here, because we have, alongside all of this, implemented a new system, which is a digital system of maternity records, and we're heavily involved in that integration. So, Kathy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for the question, Andrew. So Badgernet is a whole maternity electronic patient record system that actually has a specific module within it for BSOTs. So that when the calls are coming through, the midwives are accessing the BSOT's triage element and are dealing live with live information about that current pregnancy and the reporting considerations that the women are presenting to us. So that's very well integrated. It means that we are able to
ensure that women are referred appropriately where clinical intervention is indicated, and that is based on a system whereby, based on what they're ringing us about, for instance, if they've got concerns about their baby's movements, there's a whole checklist of information that the midwife will go through with that woman in order to gain as much information as she can to make a clinical decision about inviting that woman in for review. It's absolutely integrated into the Badgernet system. It enables us to see live the numbers of women who are referred, who are in the system and being triaged. It's really very enabling in terms of safety for our services.
Points or comments? No, well, we have a whole series of advice, assurance and alerts set out in paper. Are we content to accept those as set out in the recommendation? So Denise, thank you again for joining us. You're very, very welcome. And we were saying earlier, this is a major milestone for us today, given that you were with us here a year ago when you presented the report from the independent review. And here we are now, hopefully, in a position to approve the final improvement plan that you and your oversight panel colleagues have helped us so much with over the last 12 months. So shall I hand over to you then for your oversight panel report, please?
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the invitation. And as you say, we're a year on since we published the report. So I'm going to take the paper as read and just pull out some key points. The improvement plan, so there are three things really. One is that the oversight panel undertook a clinical site visit in June. We went to the Morriston site, we went to the Singleton site, we went to the standalone birth unit, and we met with quite a lot of the staff and had some discussions. We ran a mini conference in the afternoon, and our team facilitated workshops on sort of the final iteration of the improvement plan. We then have received the improvement plan, and at our last oversight panel meeting, we discussed all of those, and we fed back to the theme leads, and we had a direct meeting with Liz and team to feedback our kind of comments on all of that. So firstly, on the improvement plan, I think this plan, you know, what I think is a really good example of the improvement plan is, had the health board just looked at a recommendation list with a RAG rating, and you can see that as an example in the improvement plan, that would not have really got the depth of improvement that's been required over this year. And it just shows that improvement plans take time, and they take time to embed and co-design with the staff and with the patients around the changes that are needed. It will always, I think, be a dynamic document. It will always need to reflect what's going on, you know, locally and nationally. You've had the All Wales review. We've more recently had the England AMOS review. We've had the Nottingham review. And it's really important to just make sure that that is continually just asking yourself that question. Are there things that are coming out in those reviews that are missing in any way to make sure that that joins up? I would also just highlight, there's a very useful document that's just come out of NHS England on triage, and I have shared that with the team. Even though it's an England document, I think it's incredibly helpful, and not surprisingly, triage has come out as a significant risk across England as well. So in terms of the improvement plan, we are satisfied that there's enough depth in that report, and with the assurance that the Executive Programme Board will continue to work on that improvement plan and the implementation of that, we would recommend that the board does sign off that plan. There are some caveats to that, which we just need to get assurance that that work will continue, and I think there are ways of which we can do that which do not hold up the board signing off the improvement plan. There are a few points that are really quite important. I think the view of the oversight panel was the improvement plan is very narrative heavy, it's very long. And I think for the board to take assurance, there needs to be some way of having a progress report. And I think the perinatal committee report goes some way to do that, but that's also very lengthy. So what we would recommend, and this is the conversations we had with the leads, is what would be very useful to you as a board now is to look at your year's data, outcome data from last July to now. And we've asked the team if they can give you, I think it's a one-pager, so that you can have a look at the progress on those key outcome measures, which is around the measures that you've already been looking at in the perinatal committee report, but making sure as a board that gives you the opportunity for scrutiny and discussion. And just one example is just making sure your HIE cases are the ones that you really would need to be paying attention to as your term babies, so unexpected admissions to neonatal unit that require cooling. So those, and we talked about, haven't we, admissions to intensive care, etc. So we've asked to have a look at that, and we think that would be helpful to you. And some combination now of the progress of that in a way that gives headlines, and I think there's an opportunity for the detail to be discussed in the committees that you already have. Just a few other points. So triage was just something that we want the team to be aware of, and certainly the feedback that we had from the clinical staff that are delivering that service is one of the questions to consider is when you're implementing such a significant change, just to check about any unintended impacts or consequences that could occur. One of the things we said that will help the improvement plan considerably is to really focus on some key metrics. At the moment, there are a huge number of metrics, and something that I think will give you assurance is three things. So you'll be interested in how many drop calls there are. So if there are only 2 people working in triage, what happens if the phone doesn't get answered? So are you measuring that? If you are having a different system where someone else answers the phone, but the people who are delivering the triage assessments are interrupted, what are the number of interruptions and how does that impact on the patient experience, and the number of diverted calls? And linked to that is real-time feedback. And it sounds like you've just had some kind of sharing of the feedback from the families. So triage and testing triage alongside and co-designing with the staff that are delivering it is really very, very important. And I think you'll see, triage is a concern nationally. So it is going to need, more work, more attention and iterative kind of progress on that. The second area really was just in terms of the engagement and involvement with family plan. We think there's more work to be done there with some kind of tighter KPIs, particularly the opportunity to do further work with other partners like CLICE and the MVPs and charities and others. How bringing all that resource together could help and support, particularly an organisation that has its own pressures, how there could be some kind of sharing of resources. We talked about just clarifying the external input into some of the reviews, just some more detail about that. There is some need for a bit more awareness raising on the Morrison site. One of the things that we would say is the lessons that have come from the maternity and neonatal review are not just about maternity and neonates. Most of those themes could probably apply across many areas of the business, whether it's the emergency department or mental health services, the way in which response to harm and learning from harm is clarified. We have written separately to the Chief Executive Chair about the risks of the 2-site working. A huge amount of mitigation has been put in place, but it will not take the risk away completely. So we've written really to say, what can we do as an oversight panel to further support those discussions? So I'll just stop there really, and those are really the key points from us. But I think the other thing I would say is the oversight panel members have offered to support some of the kind of a bit sharper writing of some of the reports. So they've offered support to do that, because the risk is, I think, particularly when you have such a huge agenda, is when you've got very long reports to read, the importance of just focusing on the things you really need assurance on.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, you and oversight panel colleagues. On your last point, the risks around two-site working, for the September board, we will be bringing a paper on the case for change relating to that agenda, which you very helpfully flagged up for us. And that, of course, we have been managing and mitigating well for some considerable time, but we take that on board and we will be bringing the case for change to the September board. And we thank you very much for your offer of ongoing help as we look to streamline and distill our reporting, and to make sure that we do get the essence that needs to come to the board, and then the more detailed work that can happen at committee level and at executive level. And we do know, Denise, you'll be very pleased that we do have some significant work planned for the rest of 26-27 through our sounding board processes, Liz, to actually engage further with the people using our services. So we do accept all the next steps that you've suggested. Welcome very much, and very appreciative of all the time you've taken, because the improvement plan was very detailed, as you said. I'm delighted you think the board can approve this plan with the next steps. And we hope that you will come back in September before the oversight panel steps down, because we will have a report setting out those next steps for that as well, and how we are going to manage the oversight scrutiny of operational delivery, and then eventually bring our planning together in 27, perinatal committee reporting and the improvement planning. So do you want to stay with us just a tad longer, Denise, as we complete this section before we move into the plan itself? Amy, we talked about the fact that we had the Llais review on the report as well a year ago, and we know that you've been sort of observing and coming along with us on the improvement journey we've been making. Is there anything that you'd like to say at this point?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was going to wait until you ended the section, but I'm happy to come in now. I think Llais would like to formally put on record that it recognises the significant effort, the openness and the progress, the whole health board has demonstrated, and all involved in terms of the oversight panel and the committee, in trying to ensure those improvements are put in place. And like I said, it wants to formally note and recognise that we do appreciate the openness and transparency that has taken place throughout the process, and we are delighted to see that there has been vast improvements, and governance arrangements has strengthened, and there has been focus on compassionate and equitable and safe care as well. We do look forward to working with you in the near and long future to ensure that those assurances continue, and to see where we can do some co-production in terms of getting the best outcome for the patients the health board serves. So thank you, and like I said, we look forward to continue to working with you on the improvements going forward.
And Chair, I know Claire's team are coming in very soon into maternity services, and we look forward to that. And we also look forward to developing the MNVP network that now Llais are hosting across Wales. So we will be working closely together.
Do you want to go at this point before we move to the actual improvement?
Yes, and thank you, Denise, for your feedback, and absolutely take on board the further guidance and recommendation from you in terms of how we can continue to strengthen both how we report into board, so the board is able to focus on the most important matters from all of the detail that we're providing. And just to say, to acknowledge the journey that we've been on, as you were saying, Chair, from when we first received that report, it was important at that time to apologise unreservedly for the trauma that has been caused by some of the delivery in the past in terms of our service, It was really important that we heard the voices of those women and families. We'll continue to strengthen the way that we do that. And Amy, thank you very much for the offer of continuing to work on that, because that is the most important thing. And for me, that's always been kind of the guiding principle around this, Denise, both in terms of the immediacy that we are listening to patients and women as they are going through their service in real time, and also that we're able to take their reflections after the event and any learning that we've got to continue to improve the service. So I want to acknowledge the huge amount of work that Liz and Dion, sort of from the corporate side, and the service group have undertaken to get us to where we need to be. We're not complacent that we're taking our foot off the gas at all. We will continue to make those improvements and continue to keep a focus on this as an important area of work. I think that will be strengthened when we do move into our care group model, where we'll specifically have a care group for children, women and families, and we will continue to engage, Denise, in the All Wales work in the national programme. I understand that the Chief Nursing Officer is hoping to attend our board meeting in September too, which would be really welcome. So I know we've kept engaged through Anne Gow, who's been the Cabinet Minister's observer on the work and feeding back through that mechanism. We have had, we're also reporting through our escalation, with our escalation board, and we've had separate conversations specifically about this programme of work too. So yeah, just put on my record for thanks to everybody, and to Denise, you and the Oversight Panel as well, for helping us get us to this place, and our commitment to continue the improvements and learning on an ongoing basis. Thank you.
So thank you. So with that then, Denise, just to conclude this section, so we thank you and the Oversight Panel formally again. We are grateful for all the work you've put in analysing the improvement plan, and the recommendation that we are in a position to approve the improvement plan, and that we accept the next steps, and we look forward to coming back in September when we will update you on progress we've made with those steps. And Amy, on record again, our appreciation of all the support we've had from you and from Clyde's colleagues. And we look forward to continuing to work with you closely as we develop our family and community engagement strategy. So with that, we can move to the improvement plan, please.
Thank you, Chair. And Raj and I, so at the beginning of our improvement plan is a letter really from Raj and I, because Raj did a huge amount of work before I stepped into the health board to start us on this process, and we've reiterated our apologies, and we will continue to do that. But the commitment is clear from the organisation and from the teams within perinatal that we will listen, we will learn, and we will improve. This improvement plan has really moved from plan to active delivery, and we've seen the progress over time, some of it which we've discussed today, but we've also got more to do. And we've incorporated the recommendations from all visits, Llais, HIW, the All Wales assessment, the family-led review, as we've said previously, but we're right now completing a gap analysis against the more national programmes of Ockenden and Amos reviews that have highlighted some themes that we want to just check are covered within our improvement plan. We believe they are, but we are going to take that formally through our perinatal committee. We've established much stronger foundations. We've talked about them here today, and those foundations are set and will continue. We cannot undo or underestimate the harm that happened, but in the 12 months since review, we are continuing to engage with our community. We're finding different ways of doing that, and we know there is always more work to do, but co-production is an absolute part of that. I have to say, working with the team over the last 12 months and with our independent oversight panel, I think what we've seen is a real commitment and confidence that our team are ambitious and they want to deliver. They have commitment and passion, and we want to get to the best service that we possibly can for our women and families. We have made some safety improvements already. We've talked about 24/7 maternity triage, the early warning scores, although always more to do. The compliance with training, particularly fetal monitoring training. We've enhanced our consultant and senior clinical workforce presence, and we've got an induction of labour prioritisation process already in place. We have improved our investigation, our learning and safety culture. We've got greater engagement with women, families and communities, and there's been huge investment in the workforce, the leadership and the culture of that workforce. We've had multidisciplinary leadership development. We've developed comprehensive staff experience and wellbeing plans, and we are working to strengthen psychological safety and staff voice and wellbeing. So the plan is here. It is very detailed. Denise, you're absolutely right. There is so much detail in this plan, but we felt it was really important to reflect that here now, and we will develop a much more refined report, if you like, with the metrics that are outlined against each of the improvement elements outlined within it. Our executive-led review, our executive-led programme will continue. I'm really grateful that our chief exec has been chairing that, and we will continue to work in exactly the same way as we have. And we know that this improvement will not end. We will continuously want to be curious. We want to look at what we can do through a quality improvement perspective, and we will listen to our families and women as we do that. So I don't think there's much more to say, Chair. It is a huge document. I just want to thank again the team, Fionn, Kathy and Sue Joy particularly, as well as Raj. What I've seen is a team through adversity have come together with a real ambition to make things better, and that's why we're all here.
All right, and then Kath, I'm just going to ask you, is anything you want to add? We know that you've been heavily involved in developing this plan. So Joy, anything from you?
No, I just wanted to thank my colleagues really, because they have stood in the face of adversity and taken the challenge on to improve. So I think it's been a great journey over the last 1 year, a lot of learning, learning not only for individuals, but for the system in particular. And I think this is reflected in everything that we do today. And I'm hoping that that will continue. There are still challenges, as we have already heard, and I'm hoping that those challenges will be met with the same vigor and enthusiasm and cohesion that we have shown over the last 1 or 2 years for the team. So I'm very proud of the service, and I'm hoping that we have demonstrated that we have made progress, and I can assure you that we'll continue to do so. Thank you.
Kathy.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think there's anything more I can add. I think Sue Joy signed that beautifully, but I think the culmination of what we have been discussing today and what has been presented is work as done, not work as imagined. We are really very committed to how we improve our services and how we how the community see us as a period of service, and long may it continue.
Thank you. Thank you both very much, and please convey our thanks to all members of the team, whom we know have worked long and hard over the last 12 months to get us to this point. Thank you. So at that point then, can we move to approve the updated perinatal improvement plan? Final plan, recognising it's a dynamic document, it will also be streamlined and will come back to us in September in our streamlined focus. So we can take assurance, as we're asked to. We made sustained progress over the years since the publication of the review. We now have a plan, the oversight plan, which is content with and is satisfied that we can approve. There are 3 alerts that are brought to our attention on 2 sites working on the triage system and paediatric radiology, and we will keep those alerts under consideration and active management as we move forward. So with that, are we able to move to approve? Hugo, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Beyond Green as well, who's with us, who's seconded from Public Health, who I think has played an important role in this. Thank you.
So I'm going to come. Okay. So are we able to move to a trip? Thank you. So, Beyond. This is the result of so many hours of your work, really. And Hazel and I know as we were in those days when we were putting the final plan together to submit it to you, played an absolute blinder. And we want to say a huge thank you to Elgin Bow, because your attention to detail, making sure that that plan as comprehensive as we could make it before it went in, was just brilliant. Thank you. We can have a cup of tea. So we'll have a 10-minute break. And Denise, thank you again. Are you still in Spain?
Yes,
Hey, well, carry on enjoying your time in Spain then, and we look forward to seeing you in September. Thank you both. Thank you.
thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
10 minutes break then.
No.